Mark Poloncarz sent me what has to be the dumbest letter in the history of government. Keep in mind, for government, the bar is very low. Before we get to that, a lot of these left-wing lunatics and extremist snowflakes need to stop sucking their thumb in the fetal position and obsessing over whether or not I was in Washington, D.C. on the day of the riots on January 6th. I'm going to save the best for last. We'll get to that in just 1 minute, because this is really going to be the Stefan Mychajliw Rath Building security camera show. You remember over the summer, Mark Poloncarz had no problems whatsoever finding security footage of me not wearing a mask, God forbid, in the Rath Building. Mark Poloncarz pitched a story to the Buffalo News that because sometimes I don't use my ID to either park my car or open a door, that means I'm not here in the Rath Building. It's 100% false. As a matter of fact, the reporter they pitched the story to picked a date where there's no record of me using my ID to get here, and I said, by the way, check your calendar. Where were you on that day? Well, that Buffalo News reporter was in this office with me in the Rath Building on the day that Mark Poloncarz claimed I wasn't here because I just didn't use my ID to open a door. So let's go to December 28th, a day that I did not use an ID to open a door or to park. Now, Mark Poloncarz can falsely claim that that means I'm not in the Rath Building. 100% false. And guess who helped me prove that? The Poloncarz Administration. Here's security footage of me in the Rath Building on December 28th. January 14th, let's pick another day. Guess where I was? Here in the Rath Building, even though I didn't use an ID to park or open a door. January 15th is interesting because here's the security camera footage of me in the Rath Building. That's also an interesting date because I did not use my ID card to park or to open a door, but yet I'm here in the Rath Building, not only at work, but conducting an interview with Channel 7's Jeff Slauson.
According to Mychajliw, his office is supposed to receive COVID-19 fines after he changed the county charter, directing the health department to have fines sent to the comptroller.
We were very crystal clear with the health department from day one on what the policy is, why we're putting it in place, and that we are the ones that deposit COVID fines. So from our perspective,
we don't see any confusion at all on what's happening with COVID fines. So there's multiple ways to get into this building without using your ID. Number one, a lot of times I will commute with my wife. She works close to downtown, and Rath Building employees are very polite. We open the door for one another. Take a look. Especially during the morning rush, we like each other, we work together, we open doors for one another. Take another look. And a lot of times when our outer door is open, Linda, our front secretary, she is so sweet, she has a buzzer that hits the door and electronically lets me in without having to use my ID. And if I do not have my ID, security simply buzzes me into the parking lot.
Morning, security officer. How can I help you?
Hey, officer, it's Stefan Mychajliw, the county controller. I don't have my ID today. Would you mind? I'm at the gate. You can probably see me in the camera. Would you mind just buzzing me in this morning, please?
Sure, 1 second, please.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Now let's get to the good stuff. The Poloncarz letter. He basically said that I was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th participating in the riots. And who is his source? WBEN Radio. Now, I had no idea that Mark Poloncarz was an avid listener of conservative radio and David Bellavia and the financial guys, but he is. He doesn't like calling them, but he listens.
He said, honest to God, Mike, he said in one of the press conferences I heard, there's so much data that it would require its own press. It would take up all the press conference time. I couldn't possibly.
Mark, I think it's worth it. I mean, you've destroyed, half of these businesses.
Poloncarz's letter. What was your reason for going? What did you do when you were there? Were you with any group of individuals that entered the Capitol? Did I take part in violent acts in Washington, D.C.? Now, Mark Poloncarz is an absolute moron. He has no problem finding security footage of me without a mask on, but on January 6th, all he had to do was look at security cam footage that his administration is in control of, and guess where I was? Right here while the riots were taking place in the Rath Building in Buffalo. Take a look. The Poloncarz letter also says, why have you waited so long to say anything about the violence? Now, for a guy that's constantly on social media, all he had to do was either go to the Google machine or look at my social media, where I condemned the violence literally right after it happened. Violence is never the answer, whether it is Antifa attacking police officers and burning down buildings, or protesters in Washington attacking police and attacking the military. We're better than this. As a matter of fact, one taxpayer called the office while I was here on January 6th. I picked up the phone, demanding to know why I was in Washington. I was very polite, and I says, ma'am, let's think about your lapse in logic that if I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, how am I picking up the phone in Buffalo and answering your call? And there was a long pause, and she basically said, well, you, and then hung up the phone. As a matter of fact, on January 6th, 3 different Buffalo News reporters called me here in the office, and they just asked the question, hey, are you in Buffalo or are you in Washington? I told them I was here in the Rath Building, getting the job done on behalf of taxpayers, and I actually felt like Terry Anderson taking a hostage video, that I even took a selfie for them just to prove that I was here with the Buffalo News in the background to show that I'm in Buffalo and not in Washington. I don't suffer fools gladly, as you can see, and so I will not tolerate Mark Poloncarz or gullible media who are just as lazy and intellectually dishonest as these radical progressives who are obsessed about whether or not I'm in the Rath Building and whether or not I use my ID card to get in. Clearly, Mark Poloncarz's security footage proves, and I do thank the Poloncarz Administration for providing it, that I'm here at work, whether it's throughout the year or on January 6th.